The God who sees what you couldn't. There comes a time in every believer's life when we must confront a heartbreaking truth that not every person sent into our lives was sent by God. Some were permitted for a season to test us, to refine us, or to awaken something we refuse to see. And for many, that painful awakening comes in the form of dealing with a narcissist, the charm, the manipulation, the cycles of hope and station. None of it was random. You didn't fall into it because you were weak. You were targeted because of the light you carried, and your goodness was used against you. But here's the greater truth: God never left you in that storm. Even in your lowest moments, when the narcissist voice was louder than your own prayers, God was still working. He had a plan, not only to bring you out, but to ensure they would never have access to you again. This is not just about escape. It's about divine severance. It's about justice. It's about rebuilding under God's protection. And today, we unfold his exact plan step by step so you can see that your pain was part of your preparation and your peace is his promise. One, God reveals the narcissist's true nature to you. God, in his infinite wisdom, does not begin his plan for deliverance by moving your feet. He begins by awakening your eyes. Before he brings separation, he brings revelation. For many believers, the greatest deception they will ever encounter is not the blatant attack of the enemy, but the quiet, cunning counterfeit of love. The masks itself in charm, intensity, and even religious language. The narcissist does not walk into your life as a threat, a walk in as a gift, a blessing, an answered prayer. And that is precisely why God's first act in his plan to free you is not escape, it is exposure. You must understand that narcissists rarely reveal their true nature immediately. They come clothed, and everything you longed for: attentiveness, emotional pursuit, admiration. They watch, carefully mirroring your kindness, echoing your beliefs, mimicking your values. It feels divine, it feels like confirmation, but slowly, almost imperceptibly, they begin to tighten invisible chains around your identity. The compliments turn into criticisms wrapped in flattery. The connection turns into control. Your voice softens your confidence. With his, he starts to second guess your intuition, your memory, your worth. And the worst part is you begin to question your own relationship with God, wondering why he would allow you to be loved this way, never realizing it was never love to begin with. It is here, in the quiet take of confusion, that God begins his revelation. He doesn't storm and he doesn't tear it all down in a moment. Instead, like the slow rising of the morning sun, he begins to illuminate the shadowed corners of your reality. You feel it before you can articulate it. You notice the way their words contradict their actions. You start to discern how their apologies lack repentance. You catch the subtle, chilling truth. Do they only apologize to reset the control, not to heal the harm? You recognize how your spiritual peace vanishes in their presence, how your joy seems tethered to their approval, and how your soul grows silent in their company. What once seemed like passion now feels like poison, and the love you once fought to protect now feels like a prison. But even then, even when your spirit begins to awaken, your heart may resist. Because part of the narcissist's strategy is spiritual, to make you believe that staying is righteous, that leaving his betrayal, that enduring is godly. They cloak their control in spiritual language. They may use scripture to shame you. They may twist the concept of forgiveness to avoid accountability. They may weaponize your compassion against you, convincing you that your suffering is noble, that it's your calling to carry their dysfunction as if it were your cross. And so, even in the revelation, there is war, not physical war, but a war for clarity, for identity, for spiritual alignment. That's why God continues to reveal layer by painful layer until your soul can no longer deny what your eyes now see. He confirms his warnings in Scripture. He surrounds you with voices of truth, maybe through a sermon, a book, or even a stranger's story that mirrors your own. He allows the narcissist to slip, not to destroy you further, but to finally undeniably show you what has been hidden in plain sight. He permits the final manipulation to fall flat, the final lie to ring hollow, the final charm to feel repulsive. He lets the very tactics that once held you captive become the things that now repulse your spirit. And when that moment arrives, when you finally see them for who they truly are, it does not bring peace at first, it brings grief. Because you must mourn the illusion, you must face the heartbreak of realizing that what you loved never really existed. You must reconcile with the truth that you weren't crazy, you were preyed upon, you weren't weak, you are loyal to someone who never intended to be worthy of that loyalty. And in that holy breaking, something new begins to form, not bitterness, not revenge, but vision. God's revelation is not merely about seeing the narcissist, it's about seeing yourself again. It's about recovering the image of who you were before manipulation distorted your sense of worth. It's about remembering your value not in their eyes, but in His. It's about rediscovering that you were never hard to love. This revelation is the first act of divine rescue because God will never force you out of a place you still call safe. He will never remove you from a person you still believe is your destiny. Instead, He gives you the gift of painful, undeniable truth, so that when He opens the door, your heart no longer clings to the one who changed it. This is not cruelty. This is love, the kind of love that burns away delusion, so that healing can begin, the kind of love that doesn't just rescue you physically, but revives you spiritually, the kind of love that refuses to leave you in darkness just because you've gotten used to it. So when you look back and remember the moment the mosque slipped, the moment the voice of the narcissist lost his grip, remember this: that was not coincidence. That was not just time revealing truth. That was God, that was heaven's hand pulling back the curtain and saying to your soul, now see. And when you see, never again return to blindness. This is how God begins his plan with truth, because it is written, and it will never change. You shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And no narcissist can survive in the light of that truth, too. God dismantles the bond you thought was love. Once God reveals the true identity of the narcissist, he does not stop at awakening, he moves toward liberation. But in his mercy, he knows the truth alone is not enough to set you free if your soul is still attached to the lie. So the next phase of his divine plan is far more intimate and surgical. He begins to dismantle the emotional and spiritual bond that had been falsely labeled as love. This is not a punishment, it is deliverance at the deepest level, because God is not just trying to remove the narcissist from your life, he is removing the residue of them from your soul. You see, when we love deeply, we bond completely. Our hearts were made to cleave, to attach, to give and receive without fear. And when we extend that sacred design to someone who exploits it, one who uses affection to control, who confuses our empathy for naivety, we do not just suffer emotionally, we become entangled spiritually. The narcissist knows this. That is why they invest so much in the performance phase, flood you with attention, adoration, intensity. They convince you that what you found is rare, cosmic, even divine, and because you are sincere, you believe it. You pour into it, you protect it, you fight for it, thinking you are protecting love, when in reality, you are protecting the very thing that is silently destroying you. And God, being a jealous and loving Father, cannot let that stand, not because He wants you to suffer more, but because He wants to bring you into something real, something lasting, something holy. And to do that, He must first allow the false thing to fall apart. That is why once He opens your eyes, He doesn't repair what you had, He begins to unravel it. The emotional chemistry begins to fade, the physical pull weakens, the highs that once felt euphoric start to feel exhausting. The T is that used to pull your sympathy now trigger a deeper suspicion. You start seeing patterns instead of passion and manipulation instead of meaning. This is where many grow frightened, because what used to feel so powerful now feels repulsive, and in your flesh you wonder, what is happening to me? But in your spirit, something is shifting. You are no longer under the same spell. The bond is not being reinforced, it is being broken. On purpose by God, He is letting the emotional charge die. He is taking the edge off the addiction. The soul tie is weakening, the trauma bond is decaying. And where once you felt desperate to keep the connection alive, now you begin to feel the weight of relief whenever there is distance. That's not apathy, that's healing, that's not cruelty, that's clarity. God does not destroy what He builds. So if it is crumbling, if the foundation is cracking, if the joy has been replaced by dread, that is your confirmation that God never authored it. And what He did not author, He will not bless. So He begins the holy dismantling, not with violence, but with wisdom, not by ripping it out all at once, but by allowing your soul to slowly detach, so that when the final severing comes, you do not grieve. Has one still entangled, you walk away, or were awake and aligned with truth. This is not just the breaking of a relationship, it is the breaking of a false covenant, a covenant built on lies and forced by fear and maintained by cycles of chaos and relief. God is not calling you to rescue the narcissist. He is calling you to rescue your own soul from the altar of their control. And when He begins to dismantle that bond, you will feel it not only in your mind, but in your body, your sleep, your spirit. The craving stops, the fog lifts, the pool disappears. You don't want them to text. You no longer imagine reconciliation. You stop defending what once devoured you, and this, though it may feel numb at first, is a sacred mercy. It is the fulfillment of Isaiah 61, the beauty for ashes, the oil of joy for mourning. But to receive that exchange, the ashes must, for the fire must die, the illusion must end, and God, in His relentless love for your future, lets it, because He knows you cannot receive His peace if you are still addicted to counterfeit passion. He knows you cannot embrace His Ruth while still gripping the memory of a lie. So He steps in not to take something from you, but to free you from what was taking everything. And as the bond weakens and your clarity strengthens, you begin to feel it, a holy quietness where they used to be panic, a sacred stillness where they used to be torment, a new hunger for God where your obsession with them used to live. And when that shift happens, you'll know you're no longer mourning what was. You are being prepared for what's coming, and what's coming is not another cycle of survival. It's wholeness, identity, and peace, all built not on illusion, but on the solid, unshakable truth of God. Comment below with the words, "I walk away with God, not guilt." Let it be your confession of freedom, that heaven hear it, and let hell tremble because of it. 3. God cuts off their access to your life. There is a moment in the divine plan where revelation and emotional detachment are no longer enough. God, in his righteous finality, steps in to close the door himself. It is not left to your feelings, it is not up to your willpower, because the ties that bound you ran too deep, and God knew that the only way to preserve your destiny was to do what your heart may have hesitated to do: cut off the narcissist access completely. And he does it masterfully, quietly, thoroughly, not with loud announcements, but with divine orchestration that leaves no room for reversal. You may have thought the relationship ended because of an argument, a betrayal, or a sudden silence. But behind that moment was the sovereign hand of God, working through the cracks to seal what needed to be closed. What looks like chaos in the natural is in the spiritual realm, holy order being restored. This is where many believe has become confused, because the narcissist exit doesn't always feel like victory. At first, it often feels like rejection, abandonment, or confusion. You might even find yourself wondering if you made a mistake, if you were too harsh, or if reconciliation is still possible. That confusion is exactly why God does not leave this step up to your discernment alone. He steps in with clarity that cannot be ignored. He allows the narcissist behavior to become intolerable. Their tactics no longer work. That manipulation no longer moves you. Their words fall flat. Where once you felt pulled, you now feel nothing. Where once you felt weak, you now feel done. And in this done, God moves swiftly. He creates distance, geographical, emotional, and spiritual communication falters. Opportunities to reconnect seem to dry up. What once seemed inevitable now feels impossible. And that's not coincidence. That's the mercy of God, because if the narcissist had even one more door to walk through, they would. If they had even one more crack to slip through, they would exploit it. A God is sealing your borders. You may have once been available to their chaos. You may have one sunset, every call responded to, every crisis fell for every apology. But not anymore, not because you grew cold, but because God built a firewall around your soul. He changed the locks, he altered the terrain, and the narcissists, try as they might, cannot find a way back in. Their charm doesn't work, their threats don't scare you. Their silence doesn't destabilize you. The hooks are gone, the hold is broken. You are no longer under their spiritual jurisdiction. Some will say, but what if they change, or shouldn't I still be open to reconciliation? And the answer is not based on your emotion, it's based on the authority of heavy. And when God removes someone to protect your purpose, it is not your responsibility to reopen the door he has shut. It is your responsibility to honor the boundary he placed. This is not bitterness. This is a being's. This is trust that the same God who saved you from that pit will also lead you into a promise where the presence of the narcissist is neither required nor permitted. God's cutoff is not just circumstantial, it is spiritual. It is not a break in communication, it is a severing of access. You are not in hiding, you are in protection. And what protected by God can no longer be possessed by manipulation. Sometimes you'll sense the narcissist trying to reach back in a sudden message, a random memory, a new social media account, a comment from someone mutual. But don't be deceived, these are not coincidences. They are attempts to re-enter what God has already sealed. And if you look closely, you'll notice something. You are not drawn to respond the same way. Your spirit hesitates, your peace takes priority. That's not just maturity, yet evidence that God's boundary is working. You are no longer A slave to the cycle, you've been spiritually transferred out of their reach. When God says no more, hell cannot say just one more time. When God says this access is denied, no apology can unlock what heaven has sealed. And when God guides you, not even your old self can reopen what he has shot in your new identity. This is not just the end of a chapter. This is the end of their influence, their voice, their chaos, their grip. Not because you blocked them, but because God did. And in his blocking, there is no loophole, only freedom, only protection. Only peace, for God begins restoring what the narcissist tried to destroy. When God closes the door to your past, he does not leave you standing in the ruins. He doesn't just cut off what was toxic, he restores what was taken, what was twisted, and what was left in ashes. Because divine separation is not the end of the story, it is the beginning of resurrection. And now, in the stillness of the storm's aftermath, you will begin to see what the enemy hoped he would never realize, that everything they tried to break, a new God is now rebuilding. Stronger than before, the narcissist didn't just weigh your time, they targeted your identity. They studied the light in you not to cherish it, but to siphon it. They saw your joy as fuel, your faith, or something to imitate, and manipulate your compassion as weakness to exploit. Every time you extended grace, they twisted it. Every time you forgave, they stretched your heart thinner, and slowly, without realizing it, you began to adjust your voice, your truth, your instincts to maintain peace, to avoid conflict, to protect what you thought was love. In doing so, you began to shrink, and the longer you stayed, the more that erosion became invisible to you. The slow death of self is the quietest of all, but God never loses track of who you really are. Even when you forgot yourself, he remembered. Even when you abandoned your dreams, your confidence, your boldness, he preserved them. And now that the narcissist has gone, God begins the sacred process of returning you to yourself. He begins with your mind, the torment of overthinking, the confusion about what was real and what wasn't, the shame from tolerating what you now see clearly. He touches all of it. He begins to sweep away the mental fog. You find yourself thinking clearly again. The emotional chaos that once defined you, day starts to fade. The internal tension that had become your baseline starts to loosen. Your thoughts are no longer shaped by the narcissist's voice or their reactions. Instead, your mind becomes fertile soil for God's truth to grow again. Then he restores your voice, the one you silenced to keep the peace, the one you softened to avoid punishment, the one you lost trying to be easy to love. He brings it back, not louder, but truer. You begin to say what you mean without fear. You set boundaries. Without guilt, you walk in truth, not apology. And in that boldness, you feel him beside you, pleased, protective, proud. Then comes your heart, the one that became numb just to survive, the one that got used to counterfeit intimacy and emotional starvation. God begins to breathe warmth into it again, not through another person, but through his own presence. You find joy in solitude. You laugh without shame. You feel excitement for the future again, not dread. What once was flat and fatigued becomes soft, responsive, and alive. And slowly, he stopped bracing for pain. You stop expecting disappointment because something unfamiliar starts to settle in your chest. Peace that doesn't come and go. Peace that stays, but God doesn't stop there. He goes deeper still into the spiritual places, because narcissistic abuse is not just psychological, it is spiritual violation. The enemy used that person to interfere with your connection to God, to make you doubt your discernment, to silence your prayer life, to corrode your trust in divine love. So God steps in and reclaims the territory. He reminds you that his voice never sounded like manipulation. His love never came with punishment. His presence was never performative. And as your intimacy with him deepens again, you realize you are never alone, not for a moment. This restoration is not quick, it is holy. And because it is holy, it is thorough. God is not trying to get you back to who you were before the narcissist. He is doing something greater. He is refining you through the fire, strengthening you in places you didn't know. What week and preparing you for a season where does sentiment and peace guide your every step, not fear, not trauma, not survival. And here's what's most beautiful: what the narcissist tried to destroy, God didn't just preserve, he sanctified. The parts of you that were mocked are now your ministry. The emotions you ashamed for are now your superpower. The scars you carry are now sacred markers of the battles you survive.